Hey everyone, welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the second half of tonight's festivities, the BOT open meeting. It's June 20th, 2023, and it is 8:13, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Macy, when you're ready.
Mayor Billy,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol.
Here.
I don't see Trustee Corvalon online yet, but I'd like to note for the record that she will be joining us virtually tonight. Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Here.
Trustee Mountain,
Can't hear you, John. If
I
you're
don't see him online
He's not
anymore.
on.
I saw him during the town hall, but I don't see him right now.
It's like we're done.
Trustee Severs
Here.
and Trustee Sterling,
Here.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate you being here. We have 3 items tonight on the consent agenda. Are there any questions on those? 'Cause I do have a quick question if no one else does.
You have one whether we do or not.
Okay, go ahead if other people do first. Yeah. I just, trying to find it now. So this money is just going towards, with the number 3 there, with the NDDA and performance space project, this would be a loan basically from the town. Make sure I'm on the right thing here. Yeah, to the NDDA, with a 1% interest rate, pretty good deal. But so this is to go towards this performance-based project. Whether or not it's built in, like, is it decided where it's going to go?
No, so the DDA budgeted for the performance space, and so this resolution activates the funding that's needed in order to work with the engineers that are working with JVA to evaluate different locations
Okay.
and begin to do some of the more design work. But this was, the Board of Trustees already approved this in the budget. The resolutions are just needed to authorize, really activate these funds.
That was my question. Any other questions on these 3 items? If not,
The minutes look good and the warrants look good. We're good.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Macy?
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
and that's all we have right now. So,
Trustee Corvalon's online now if you want to call on her.
Trustee Corvalon, we're voting on the consent agenda.
Yeah, I read it. It's, I approve it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. Thanks, everyone. Moving on, now it's time for public comment on non-agenda items. We have no written public comments on non-agenda items tonight, but does anyone present have any public comment on non-agenda items?
On the mic.
Comprehensive plan, when will we look at that?
We'll bring the request for proposal to you in July for review and approval, and then we can move forward with sending it out to consultants.
Great.
Anyone online? I don't think, we have one person in the room. I don't think Kayla has any comments right now. Anyone online have any public comments on non-agenda items? If so, go ahead and speak up. And hearing none so far, we'll go ahead and close that section if you're trying to log on, just interrupt me here in the next few seconds and we'll let you talk, let you give your comment. But otherwise, we're going to move into staff reports.
So all the staff reports are in the packet. We appreciate that they get to be at the front. There's obviously a lot that staff are working on, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
There's a lot you're working on.
Yeah, I was like, there's
Your
no
report is
questions.
amazing, Miranda. It's unbelievable.
I know. I was like, damn.
And there's a lot of success in there as well,
Mhm.
which I think is nice to see.
I'm delighted to see road graders moving again and dirt moving. Well done.
And Mark Hall is here to talk more about that later.
Great.
And yeah,
Mark Hall, video editor. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, streets manager.
Yeah, and the mastermind behind the video editing of the housing needs assessment video.
Yeah. Very cool guys.
So,
And
wanna
thanks
say-
to Tanya and to Nicole and Don.
yeah, thanks to all the staff for doing those reports and all the hard work as usual.
I had one question for, she's not here anymore, Leah. So is the U.S. Solar Community Garden just, sounds like it's at a standstill and she's starting to look for other options?
Correct. So we have been talking quite a bit with US Solar, but every time we seek updates about really, it's, wanting to have their interface work more efficiently and just not getting a lot of updates. And so Leah and I did talk about just letting them know, like, if you can't figure this out and make a more user-friendly process, then we will go with another company. And that hasn't really seemed to motivate them much. So we do feel like it's probably the right move to look alternative partnerships.
Yeah, I for one signed up with them and like nothing has happened. Like months,
Right.
some time ago.
Right. It's like not only is it challenging to sign up, but people are not receiving the follow-up that they should. And we don't have a lot of involvement. So it's hard to really navigate how we move forward. And so just feeling like it's not the best partnership. Also received feedback from Erica Thorley, who was the former sustainability coordinator at Erie. They actually went with a different company and had a worse experience. So kind of partnering with Erica to figure out, how can different municipalities really team up together to find an organization that will support all of our needs and interests as it relates to solar, whether it's solar gardens or kind of, again, another solar program, rebate program, just looking at other options to advance solar initiatives.
And I imagine there are no public options out there in Colorado right now, rather than going with these private companies that don't seem to know how to get their shit together.
Right. Not that I'm aware of or that Lee is at this time.
Question on broadband. Did we have that conference already? The conference happened already, the boot camp?
Yeah, so, well, the boot camp is actively going. So it is every other week for, probably 10 sessions that I will enroll in. And there's a session for Mayor Billy would need to attend, as well as Rita Six, Town Treasurer, and Peter Kasich, Public Engagement Manager. I am doing that on top of working with Clear Creek and Gilpin County. So I had a great meeting with Clear Creek and Gilpin, the town of Nederland, along with all of our neighbors. On the peak to peak under Roadmap to Recovery, received $40,000, which we are going to apply to a consultant. And that consultant is really going to help us identify how to extend fiber along the peak to peak and work with ISP providers to ensure that we can secure broadband in our area. There are some kind of challenges to the different funding structures that are out there under the IIJ funding. So we also want a consultant to help guide us through that. Clear Creek and Gilpin are much further in this process than Nederland, and they were willing to sweep us into it. And so we're really lucky in that regard, where we don't have to go back and do a feasibility study or any of that. They're just looping us in, and really appreciate that effort. And also very thankful to the Roadmap to Recovery team, because what it meant is Estes Park Lions, Grand were willing to forego the money to allow Nederland, Clear Creek, and Gilpin to work together on broadband.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Any staff on the reports?
One more on consortium of cities. Was there any, we went across the spectrum from gun control to mental health. is there anything in there that's happened subsequently that's going to be helpful to us?
You know, if the town is interested in kind of talking about maybe more of the minimum wage conversations, you know, it was interesting because I talked to the minimum wage team after the consortium of cities and told them what, you know, town pays as a minimum, and just realizing that we are in a very different spectrum compensation wise. You know, they're looking at, you know, just adjustments still in the teens, where in Nederland, our entry level is typically 21, 22. And so, but it's not about the town, right? That's a larger conversation for the community, but just really recognizing the strain that that might put on our businesses. But that team is really eager to come talk with whatever community. So if the board's interested in hearing about the Boulder County Minimum Wage Initiative, they're happy to come here.
Are they trying to get us, the whole county, to a certain minimum? And if so, what's your estimate on where local employers are at with that already?
That was the first time I'd really kind of had the conversation, so I don't know what, I think they're still kind of mapping out what is that threshold, and also recognizing that mountain communities just operate very differently. I think they're just looking to gather feedback, and it's kind of a self-enrollment type process. It doesn't sound like it's a countywide initiative necessarily. It's just looking to collaborate together to do a universal effort to increase that minimum wage. And Trustee Coombs' Mal may know more from his time on the consortium.
Well, I imagine that it's progressed since I was a part of that particular effort, but that was something that I brought up constantly was, you know, that mountain businesses being asked to immediately raise the minimum wage to really anything significantly above where we're at right now is going to put a massive strain on our business community and potentially be worse for employees if they aren't able to be hired in the first place up here. So I've always wanted to see some kind of financial support built in to these kinds of programs, or some kind of incentive to phase in minimum wage over time on the part of, you know, larger governments that might be kind of trying to convince us to get on board, right? Because the way that I understood, at least then, the plan was to basically ask each municipality to sign on to a minimum wage increase over time, right? Which does make sense, but not every municipality is going to be affected in the same way. And so just recognizing that and having some built-in way to create some kind of safety net for those communities that aren't as maybe affluent. But
They're
and-
not really much further than that. They're still at that place. And at the meeting, Lions and Nederland really noted that it's hard as mountain communities to really sign on to this, just recognizing that our down below community members, they just have a very different experience when it comes to minimum wage as a mountain community.
No, so it sounds like, yeah, Holly and I, when Holly Rogan was on the consortium with me, that's what we were saying pretty much every meeting. And it sounds like the same things, the same conversations are still happening. The other thing that I understand is that they were using kind of a boilerplate model. And I think that may be where, like, I don't think they really want to create something from scratch. They want to use something that's been used elsewhere. But I still maintain that that doesn't necessarily apply to a town like Nederland. To take a boilerplate from Denver, for instance, raising the minimum wage, like, doesn't really work up here.
Other one thing I wanted to ask you about is they touched much more in the previous meeting on behavioral roadmap. Is there anything in there for us that we should be watching?
Yeah, I think the feedback, that kind of roadmap that I included with my staff report, is just the kind of the initial conversation. And even as kind of an internal work group, we didn't get through it all. But really, you know, for me, it's always tying it back to the mountains. And I think Katrina Harms is very much in that with me, where, you know, where does this connect back to the mountains? And so we always just want to make sure that our voice is heard in that that kind of space. And so I will continue to advocate for that. But as public sessions come forward, or surveys, or other feedback opportunities, really having the mountain communities chime in, I think, is important. And the one thing I will add is Nederland was actually voted as the location for the next consortium meeting in August, which is very fun. So everyone will come to us.
Yes.
Let's try for January.
We're going to do it in August.
There was one, like, on that roadmap, the things that were concerning to me were like the constant gestures towards centralizing all of the resources related to mental and behavioral health programs in the county. And what that centralization does, right, is it sounds efficient, right? When you lay it all out, and when you're in that meeting, it sounds like the most efficient way to do it. But we are a low population density area compared to the rest of the areas in Boulder County. Resources are going to be driven into high density areas in the county, which is East County down below, right? Not up here in the mountains. So I think that's just something we constantly have to push back on, that there needs to be some kind of autonomy for individual regions that kind of identify as a community to deploy those resources in the way that we understand our actual communities rather than pushing everything into a central location.
Well, and I do think what's challenging, so I obviously support as the staff member for Nederland on this, but I'm on this focused approaches and advanced equity group. So I don't touch all the strategies, all the goals. So that's where I think Mayor Pro Tem Hold the support is needed, is I'm not in each of these conversations. And so I too have to give that feedback in an open forum where I'm having much more direct involvement in that specific goal and strategy.
When are they, when in August would that be?
The consortium of cities, oh, Mayor Pro Tem Hold, do you know off the top of your head? It's, I think, the first Wednesday in August. Yeah, so August 2nd, we will hold it here.
Hybrid? I mean,
Yeah, yep.
okay. Thank you. Any more questions for town staff? If not, we can move into BOT reports and excuse my glasses. I forgot my reading glasses, and the only ones I could find in the car only have one arm, so that looked pretty silly. So for me, had a lot of talks with different folks in the community. Just folks coming up to me generally, or occasionally someone wants to schedule a meeting with all kinds of subjects. It's been good to listen to folks. A lot of people want to talk about the pump track for better, pro and con. I did have a interesting conversation with Gavin Goodrich. He's the principal of the Ned Middle High School, talking about the CTE program, with the Career and Technical Education program, and what I want to learn from him about what the town could do to help create mentorships and internships, or what the town can encourage local business owners to do. He's very in. He's dug in here. There's so many principles that have come and gone that people just expect it to be a revolving door, and he's going to be gone soon. But the reality is he's pretty invested in the community, and he's kind of brought the CTE program a little more down to earth from what it was, down to the reality. I think they're kind of combining. He's much more focused, and the students are much more focused on the outdoor leadership, the natural resources, and in hospitality. So kind of a lot of the some of the industries that already are in this area. He doesn't get much interest. Maybe he said 3 or 4 kids interested in the trades, which is a real bummer, because one of the tracks is construction, and the others before were outdoor leadership, and then it was natural resources and environmental conservation. Those have been kind of combined, and and the construction, for the most part, the kids would be, if they really wanted to get in, that would go down, and there's good programs. Boulder Tech has good programs with different. Boulder High, I think, I'm not sure which high schools, but down in the valley is really the resources. But we did talk about the potential, and I want to talk to a few more local contractors and trades folks about creating mentorship. The actual mentorships and internships potentially could be up here, where they go down for some of the training, and they're going to keep woodworking here, but other than that, they're not going to invest in like a big shop here because there's not enough interest. But we could potentially still do internships and mentorships, and and then with outdoor recreation, outdoor leadership, like the ski area, Simba, Wild Bear, and potentially the Parks Department. We just started talking. It's just really preliminary, a couple conversations. He only works for another week or so, and then he's done for the summer. But if we could start setting things up for next fall, I think is what we're trying to do. And Rand had pointed out to me that Max and Diana with the Mountain Youth Coalition are really working to create more mentorships and internships. So I'm gonna talk with Gavin and make sure he's talking with them, and if not, start those conversations. So that was productive. Hope to meet with him one more time here before he's done for the summer. Eldora, so Tom had set up a great meeting with David Halleck a couple months back, and through that we talked about the desire to talk with Eldora. So Miranda and I ended up talking with is she the vice chair, Liz, of the ECA, the Eldora. I had to look this up, the Eldora Civic Association, because I didn't know what that acronym meant until last night. And we talked about, and so we talked on the phone, and then yesterday we met with four, I think, five actually, members of the association who came and talked with us here at the community center and just talked about ways we can approach the folks in Eldora and create a more open dialogue, and realizing really what's been asked is that we need to really be clear specifically on the watershed, of the things that we think are important versus the things that we don't prioritize. But I did remind them that, part of what we need to know is, as we prioritize, is what does Eldora think? I think that will help us prioritize. So we realize Randy Lever, he just seemed real into this collaborative approach that if we show up and we, first of all, just start creating relationships, but then show up with clarity that will be better received. It's, we're probably going to be, and then Liz had brought up, what are the things Eldora or Ned can do for Eldora? So we talked about the EOP, the Emergency Operations Plan, wildlife mitigation, different things that we could talk about together in more of a collaborative mode. What can we do to collaborate together on next steps for some of these things? In that, starting talks about the watershed ordinance. And then one thing that we've been invited to, and we'll get more formal invites to soon, but the ECA has a picnic on Sunday, July 16th at noon, potluck up at Eldora at the firehouse. So we are cordially invited as trustees, and Miranda will probably be the conduit to get those invites to us. And I'm not sure, we had talked about inviting someone maybe from the sheriff's office, the Ned Fire Protection District, and the county as well. And I don't know, if you'll be inviting town staff or whatever, but so if that's something you're around for, it's really just be for folks to get to know us. So I wasn't able to get there on time because of work conflict, but Ned Community Library had about 20 librarians visit from around the country for this display, the NASA display on Discover Exoplanets exhibit that I think is here for 13, I can't remember if it's weeks or months, but it's here for quite a while. And then it moves on from here. I mean, there were folks here from Texas, librarians from other parts of the country who would come just for this presentation. And it looks pretty awesome. And NASA has, more or less gave it to us to exhibit. Very interactive for kids. The exhibits I saw looked pretty cool. I'll be at the CML conference next week. I won't be staying there. I'll just be kind of staying home and buzzing there Monday and Tuesday during the days and coming back. But I hope to, I intend, Miranda and I and Jennifer all signed up for different sessions that we'll attend. And Miranda and I will be at some of the same ones too, but it should be a lot of good info for us. And then July 4th, we got a parade coming up, a parade potluck that the town is helping coordinate and run this year and beyond. And I just want to know if any folks are interested in being in that parade, walking in and being in it. So I think I'm going to put myself out there. So that's all I got. Thanks.
I didn't have a written report, but we've been doing a lot of work at the food pantry on finding a new home and getting out of the West Wing. I've been talking with the folks at the bank building about a 1-year lease followed up at a contracted price to buy it. We've got some concerns environmentally, but we're also talking with Nederland area seniors. On the food front, it's alarming how much the uptake has happened or is cranked up
Thanks, Tom. Others?
Yeah, so real quick, I've been helping the ProSab board get sort of prioritize their goals and what they want to work on for the next year or so. We went through our last session, identified all the things, and then went in to prioritize them asynchronously. So I created a survey, and then they got to sort of identify where the prioritization is. The intent of the board is that once it's prioritized, they'll take it to the public and go for discussion. And so that's upcoming. I'm also slated to do this same process for the NDDA. So stay tuned for that. Another thing is the housing survey. When we dug into a little bit of the data, some of the recent events that we had created, such as the video, when we looked into the data, only had 19 views. So there's a missed opportunity here. And what I'm doing in the process right now is actually slicing those videos up into little more consumable bite-sized pieces of information. And I've been in contact with Derek since last week, who is the consultant from Bohannon Houston, who's helping us with the whole survey. And we are starting to get some data points and some things surface that we're learning. And so we're going to interweave these newly adjusted videos in with these insights and hopefully have an adjusted outreach campaign, because our goal is to get another 50 surveys filled out, just so that we can round out and have some really good data to pull from. So I'm in the process of doing that. And also regarding public engagement, we just had the town hall earlier of pulling different or disparate folks together, Peter, Miranda, the library, some of the community members that are focused on public engagement, and starting to put together a little bit more strategy and structure to what public engagement might look like. So we're also doing that. And then Trustee Kumza Smile and I applied this kind of a cool little project, but I think I'll let him talk about that. The MIT. Yeah. So that's it.
Thanks, Nicole.
I was going to say nothing to report, but I guess I've got something to report. Thanks to Nicole making me do it. Yeah. I don't hold out too much hope for getting this, but there is, through MIT, they have something they call the Open Documentary Lab, and the Co-Creation Studio, I think is what it's called. And they do this worlding workshop. They're trying to do it every year, I think, but they look at communities who are trying to re-envision their landscape, their geographies, their development for sustainable futures. And it uses a lot of like extended realities technology, immersive realities technology, and is grounded in documentary practice, which is something that I do down at CU. So we did apply for that for NED, for our downtown corridor, as it's a place that's under a lot of contention, and we figured that it might be a cool project. However, it's very competitive, so we'll see if we get a shout back on that one.
It's a long shot, but you know.
think they're taking 4 teams
4 teams,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
out
out-
of potentially hundreds. that
from
might-
across the world.
Yeah, that might apply.
Yeah.
But we did sort of articulate, this is a unique mountain, place. It's highly debated in terms of what we look like when we grow up. And so Eric and I thought, well, how cool would it be to envision this through virtual reality technology to hopefully solidify the community more, to bring it together, to envision it together, right? And especially since we're going through the process of identifying what the sub-area plan might look like as a first step as the comp plan, it sort of ties in. So we'll see.
It does. Miranda, apologies, I jumped the shark. We're still on staff reports. I went right to trustee reports. Let's go back to staff reports.
I think we're done with staff reports.
We finished staff.
So that's it for me and Eric.
Thanks, you guys.
So I have nothing else to report.
Well, let me think of something maybe.
I've been continuing to work on trails and recreation and advancing that as an agenda on ProSab, and yeah, that's about it. Also having done a little bit of just initial polling of some of you all on the BOT, and I hope to bring up as a discussion item just an initiative focused around universal voting to really promote and advance a kind of a potentially revolutionary approach to voting and encouraging voter turnout. So look forward to bringing that up as a discussion item soon, and a lively conversation on that.
One other thing in that regard, I'm going down to Centennial tomorrow to talk to them about how they run their neighborhood programs and keep the peace. So I'll have more to report when I come back.
Thank you. Tanya?
I don't have too much to report. I would say I recommend people to go on and look at the NDDA agenda and click on the mural. There's a preliminary drawing of the new proposed mural. It's gonna be happening on the co-op wall, and I mean, I think it's pretty awesome, pretty beautiful. So it could be just for something fun to look at, something happening in town. And then in the August agenda, I believe for the NDDA, there should be a discussion about the performance space. We'll have the information from GABA presented. And I think for people who have been saying they're interested in the performance space, there would be a good time to chime in, give us suggestions. There's no commitment on location yet. It could be Gercio, it could be the field in front of it. And so no one needs to get upset or get worked up. This is a discussion in which people can give feedback. And that's about it.
Thanks, Tanya. John Mountain, are you out there yet? Okay. Thank you. I think that concludes our reports from the BOT members today. And so if there's nothing else on that, we'll go ahead into our presentation with co-responders presentation. And Miranda, I think you'll lead us off.
Yep. So tonight we have Lynette Anderson, who is Nederland's co-responder here. I'm really excited to have her working with Nederland. We'll speak to her background, but actually did the co-responder in Lyon, so very familiar with our mountain community, very familiar with the deputies who work up here, a perfect fit to integrate into our community, and actually also worked with the Area Agency on Aging as well. So that's, I think, just a tip of the iceberg of all that Lynette brings to us. So super excited to have her here. Janine Hall has come before this board before. She's the program manager. She can't make it tonight, but Lynette was just going to do a brief overview of what are the co-responder services and a little more about her.
Okay. I don't know. Can you hear me fine?
We do.
All right. So yeah, Janine couldn't make it tonight. So there are a couple of Janine slides in here that I might be winging it a little bit, but we can absolutely, if you have questions and I can't answer them, absolutely we can, get some follow-up on that. So we're here for the long haul. So yeah. So hello, I'm your co-responder up here. Janine wanted me to put together a slide that kind of looked like me. And so this is kind of me-ish. There's like the little fun confetti stuff, but I also like to hang outside and do lots of different things. And they're up in the corner. Like this is kind of a really nice hodgepodge of my experience as well. So up in the upper right corner, it's kind of hard to see now, but there's a Jeep, and that is 505. So I've got a history. I did like 20 years of law enforcement park ranger, both as an armed ranger with the city of Boulder and then with Boulder County. So that's how I know this area. I know this area pretty well, just from putzing around back there doing patrol and fence building and volunteer projects and education. Those trees are Sherwood Gulch. So I've spent, a pretty good fair time up here. About the past 5 years I've lived in Lyons as well, and the place I was living is supposed to be torn down. So I'm currently in Longmont, and I tell you, it's really hard to go from a quiet, smaller rural town to not. It's very different. So I'm looking forward to get back. But yeah, this is just kind of me in a nutshell. That's my cat. Like my cat absolutely adopted me. So that's Maisie. And I'm a big nature girl and a big reader. And I don't know if anyone watches Ghost Hunters. Has anyone ever watched? That's Dave Tango there. Got to go on a professional ghost hunt with Dave and Steve from Ghost Hunters. So I just bring a pretty nice hodgepodge of experience besides the law enforcement. So that's how I know and fit well with the deputies, because they know that I understand where they're coming from, but I also know where they should be coming from. So there's that nice blend there. And yes, with aging, so I was Colleen Sinclair's counterpart when she was up here. So I was in Lyons, and so know a lot of the folks from there. Pretty good rural expertise, and knowing I had a client tell me where I needed to come meet for a home visit, and I'm like, is that up the road with the tree in the middle? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, I know where you are. So I'm not afraid of going off road a little bit. I also have pretty good extensive knowledge on hoarding and older adults, and so we're kind of coming across that a lot now as people age in place. So I'm sorry, I could probably just talk about myself a lot, even though I don't want to. Yeah. So this is one of Janine's slides. I'm pretty sure she probably put this in front of you before, especially when she was talking about us and our program. So that actually is not even as updated as it should be, because it doesn't have Ned up here, but it's a really good representation of how our model works. So there are other co-responder models. The city of Longmont has one where it's a mental health professional, a paramedic, and a law enforcement officer that are kind of a team, and they are what go to the calls. But we have what they call a hub and spoke model. So we have our hub, which is Boulder County Community Services, which is a department. And then through that, we kind of branch out to the different departments and usually get housed or nested within them. And Superior, Lafayette, Erie, and now Ned are what we would consider a nested, where we're nested. And then that unincorporated Boulder is everything else. So I think we're talking to the new Louisville PD chief to see if we might want to work with them as well. So that's kind of rumblings down the road. But other than that, everything else that's not a city like Boulder or Longmont, we pretty much handle. And then that's kind of nice, because when we get together as a big team, as our team gets bigger, but we're able to do cross trainings, we're able to fill each other in on different issues that might be coming up. We do a lot of teamwork, and everybody was like, really supportive of me coming in and doing this. So I have a really nice team behind me. So even if I'm not here, if I'm on vacation or if I'm out sick, there's somebody that can backfill. So that's what's kind of nice about that hub and spoke. Oh, this was another Janine slide. Um, but for the most part, yeah, I'm here 40 hours a week. I do have, like other commitments that I end up at. So, so it goes, but for the most part, my priority is up here. We do have 7 days a week coverage. That's not me, but that's the rest of the team. So we alternate weekends. This weekend is my weekend, so I have Thursday, Friday off. I work Saturday, Sunday, and I'm basically covering the entire county except for Erie. So I'm kind of it, but we cover for that 7 days a week. We respond with law enforcement. We're also starting to branch out to respond with fire. So I'm sure we'll be talking later. When I was in Lions, I did talk with fire a lot and train them as to what I could do. Most of it is supportive resource kind of stuff. A lot of times they would come to me and say, we've got this person, she calls a lot, was an older adult. We get there, she's really nice, but she wants to talk. Or she wants us to move her Kleenex box. And so it was kind of like, okay, well, here's maybe some thoughts about moving forward with that. How could we, and I knew that person, so I was able to then talk to aging and say, hey, she might need more services. Can you guys pick that up a little bit? So there's a really nice little back and forth with that. We do clinical case management. So again, referred by law enforcement. So sometimes we might not get called out. So if it's time, we're not working, or deputies go and then later they're like, well, maybe, a co-responder, they'll email us and do a referral for case management. So we can do that. We also do training to community members and law enforcement. We were already talking about maybe, kind of helping some of the staff at town hall, like, how do you handle somebody who's elevated or going through a little bit of a crisis, or might just have mental health symptoms on board, and, they are not hospitalization, they can't be hospitalized, but, how do you feel a little more comfortable around that? So that's something that we can also do. All referrals for our team come through law enforcement. We're working on fire, so fire can absolutely give me a jingle. And we're talking about Forest Service. So when I came up here, I was like, the Forest Service, that's West Mag and Gordon Gulch, and a lot of those folks come into town. So I was like, I know that there's going to be, crossover there. So once that starts happening, we're going to be able to keep data. So that's the other piece about kind of what we're doing now. So now you guys are going to have some probably solid, significant data on what's going on in the town, and maybe outside the town a little bit. So outside community members, so even in Lions, this ended up being kind of a process. Partly people knew me. I lived there. I worked there for aging. I lived in the library. I was around, and people were like, hey, there's this neighbor who's over on such and such. And then we've heard through other friends that there's a problem there at the house. And it can be kind of uncomfortable to go knock on someone's door and say, hey, I'm a mental health professional, I hear you need help. That, cold calling people didn't work well. And we don't do that. And part of that is making sure that there's the safety factor in place. And again, we want to be respectful of anybody in the community that might be experiencing a rough time or having issues. So we're trying to keep everything going through law enforcement. People can absolutely call for welfare checks, and they can ask for a co-responder to come. So if they call dispatch and say, hey, something's going on, can you have them ask for a co-responder as well? They're supposed to pass that on. I also have the ability to watch all of the calls come up. So I keep an eye on the NUD guys, and they're already starting to come in because they know I'm up here and I have candy. So whatever it takes. So they come in, and, I'll chat and I'll say, hey, what's going on? And I'll say, I've met with these people already, and they're like, oh, okay. So I think that's really going to be a helpful process, especially as the new substation gets set up and moves forward with that. But for sure, we want people to get support. We want people to get resources. So even if that's, you know, having a co-responder show up, then I can kind of make it not quite so law enforcement heavy, if that makes sense. But I still have that safety piece, and that clinical piece kind of comes as a package.
And I kind of just jump in on this slide really quick. Just a reminder that this is a DOLA grant that we got through the Peace Officer Mental Health Grant. It's 18 months. So as noted here, Lynette started in May, it will go until the end of November. So the board, I do believe that the board is interested in continuing these services. So you're not looking at 2024 budget priority, but really filling the gap of 2025. And then of course from there. So just kind of looking to the future. But we have a little bit of time in terms of assessing how to add this service into the budget.
And that's perfect, because that was the Janine piece that was missing. Thank you. So what is different about co-response in rural mountain areas? So ever since I started, I've kind of been harping on this and saying that this is different. And I think it became apparent when someone came up to buy a community member, you know, those little green canisters of propane for a cook stove. And they're like, oh, I bought some at Ace and it was really expensive. And I'm like, welcome to the mountains. So I think, you know, being able to explain that a little bit more fully to my team, but then that also bleeds out into other agencies that work in the county. So I really am a huge advocate of rural mountain communities and getting services when needed, either available or up here. Confidentiality, of course, is important. So even if somebody, you know, comes up to me, and you guys are certainly welcome to reach out to me, I can't tell you anything about what's going on though. You know, that's just to be fair. We also try to have the right gear, so we're working on that right now. So, you know, boots, gaiters, the right kinds of jackets, vehicle, you know, all of that stuff that will kind of make me efficient up here. The slowdown piece, I think what Janine meant by that is I can really take a little bit more time because I am up here. So it might be, you know, if you're calling from somebody and they're coming from Boulder, they have that time limit and they're like, I got to get back down. I got to get back down. I don't. So I could take it a little bit slower. It's much easier for me to say, hey, let's meet tomorrow at 10 o'clock at the coffee trains. All right, we'll just, you know, let's take a little bit of time, kind of slow it down. And so far that seems to be a positive. I don't think that's a negative at all. The walkabouts, so being able to walk around, so visiting the library, visiting town hall, taking, you know, walk through here, checking out the food pantry, checking out the clothing, you know, I mean, so that's kind of what is on my plate to try and do and just kind of be visible in town. I think I've had coffee at every single place, which is awesome. I love all the coffee here in town. I can't fix everything, so I can't fix everything, but I can definitely talk about it. I know. And sometimes I might have to say I can't, but that doesn't mean that I won't ask the next question of, well, how can we figure out how to do it? How can we figure out a different way? I'm very solution focused in that way. That's, you know, my tack. So for sure, even if I can't do it, I'm going to look and see if there's a way that we can't figure out from a different point of view. And, you know, again, understanding the needs up here and to be a voice. So luckily I get to voice, I take pictures and send it to my team all the time. You know, people just think, oh, it's Ned. It's like, well, it is. And it's a great community and it's beautiful and there's some really neat things, but there's also, you know, some services that are missing or just difficulty getting people connected to them. So that's one of my priorities and one of my passions. So we do have some peak to peak goals, and some of that is definitely working on the unhoused populations, and probably this is to be seen, of course, since summer is just starting to ramp up, but just with what's going on with Forest Service, and then the Boulder County Homeless Services. I don't think that was funded this year, so we'll just kind of have to see how that goes, but that's definitely on my radar. So, you know, I think you know, there's kind of different levels of unhoused, and there's, you know, folks that move through Gordon Gulch and it's the summer, you know, Mad Max kind of stuff that, you know, the rainbows and stuff that you see. And then there's the folks that kind of live pretty rough and hard, and they've lived that way. I mean, you know, I think about Ward, there's a lot of people that are just fine living in a mine shaft. It's like, okay. I just make sure that they're okay. And, you know, usually people have family or somebody maybe checking on them. If they don't, we can set up some sort of, you know, like there's a mountain deputy that definitely follows up on folks like that. So it's good. And then he tells me, and I'm like, okay, well, we'll see how we can buy some firewood to try and just keep them comfortable. Analyzing behavioral health needs. Again, I think this is, and other funding opportunities, I think this is where that data is going to come in handy. You know, and then just being close, being here in the community. So you guys can reach out and say, hey, what's going on? Or, you know, having us do a report, you're going to get a lot of good data from this, I think. And of course, you know, we're able, and I'm able to help support law enforcement. So I know, you know, there's just been a lot of stuff and a lot of tension and a lot of, you know, Ned PD is no longer an entity. So there's a lot of unknown moving forward, either just with the sheriff's office, because now they're stepping into a new place. The community, some people don't like law enforcement, and the sheriff's office is different than what they had before. So I'm really glad that I get to be here because I can help support the officers as they integrate into the community as well. Just say, hey, this is Mac community. This is kind of how things go. And I think that's really going to be helpful down the road. I think it's already helping a little bit. So I'm really curious to see how that goes.
Before we jump into your next slide, I realized that there was an error in the slide with the dates. We do have to budget December of next year if the Board of Trustees has a desire. It's a 2025, but doing math in my head, it's really 2024.
Oh, so
I was like, wait a
it's
minute,
18,
December.
it's 18 months. Yeah, I saw that's like, that's 30 months. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a gap from November 25th to the end of the year for next year. Sorry. And now questions.
Yeah, you guys can ask any questions.
Yeah, this is like week 6 or 7. Are there, and you know the resources available at the county level pretty well. Are there some things, are there some gaps between what we provide and what Boulder County provides where the trustees might be able to help straighten it out for you?
Oh, I'll throw the big T word out, transportation. I mean,
Okay.
that's always a big one. So far, I mean, when I compare Lions to Ned has a lot more going when it comes to resources and support.
Mhm.
EFA just does an astounding. I mean, I'll just talk to Kelly and she'd be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, really? So, and then Canyon Cares and, you know, there's some really nice supports up here. And with the emergency housing, however, you know, housing, of course, you know, is another one. But I think if that is something that you're curious about, let me think about that. And as I move forward, since I am still pretty fresh into it, I'm happy to look at that and see.
Great. Please do, because we're opening negotiations with the county for intergovernmental agreement.
Okay, that's perfect. And I do think I am looking into the county mediation program, restorative justice, and the mediation program. It's Debbie. And so I'm meeting with her very soon to ask about that. I don't know if that's what you're referencing.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that will be a super awesome. Debbie is great. And I can partner with her too. So, you know, in the sense that I can say, you know, if I'm working with somebody or if I need to, but yeah, definitely, I think that I can help out with.
I really like your background of law enforcement and mental health put together into a package. We're super lucky and grateful you're here.
Thanks. Yeah, it was kind of crazy how that whole thing happened, but here it is.
Pre-pandemic, we had a group running out of the Presbyterian Church, Nederland Interagency Council on Homeless Encampments niche, which has not really, as I understand it, been going on much anymore. But some of the things that they were able to do that I think were really successful that has since slipped away. They went out and made contact with a lot of folks living, Gordon Gulch, West Mag, Ruby Gulch, and those kinds of places, and provided a little bit of education training on forest living, especially when it came to fire safety, trash, human waste. But they were also able to provide dump credits so that people could go to the transfer station for free and dump trash out of their campsites. Other kinds of transportation credits for the bus. Often that came along with a sandwich, which was really useful because if you want someone to take those dump credits, often giving a sandwich helps take both things at once. So when I see here analyze behavioral health needs and Boulder County programming funding opportunities, in that vein, I just wanted to throw that out there as something that kind of used to happen up here. I think it was fairly successful until there were some jurisdictional issues, maybe some leadership issues. It turned out that maybe it wasn't appropriate for folks who didn't work for the Forest Service going into Forest Service land and kind of enforcing anything or even appear to be enforcing things. So it didn't really work out in the end, but I think it was an interesting approach. And just if that can be on our radar in ways to like mitigate fire danger and things like that with folks living in the woods
Yeah.
and also help them survive it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been talking with Chase, the new Forest Service officer. So hopefully, I think that's definitely something that I will keep in mind. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, there was some like really amazing moments in that where, there might be somebody that happened to have a truck and we gave them a bunch of dump credits and then they would go and organize other folks in Gordon Gulch to pick up all the trash, put it in the truck, go to the dump and get rid of it and kind of, help the community that's out there actually get involved in making it safer and better rather than only imposing it kind of on them from the top down.
Right. I like that. I like that a lot.
Thanks for being here, Lynette, and doing the work that you're doing. Really, really appreciate it. Also, would you be willing to send us an email or perhaps just brief Miranda and she could relay to us after you do have your meeting with the folks down there involved in the mediation and the restorative justice that you mentioned? Really curious and interested to continue that conversation here at the BOT level and to see what we can do to implement something like that here in town. And so, yeah, very, very interested to hear kind of what your report back, if you would be willing.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to do was to not just say no. I don't do mediation stuff. I do some civil things, especially if a deputy calls out, and deputies do get called to that. But I don't want to go cold knocking on somebody's door, saying your dog is too loud or whatever. And so I was doing research and found Devi and then found out that she might be coming up here. So yeah, I'll definitely touch base with her. And if that's going to potentially be a partnership, that's great because that's going to bring a different level to the sheriff's office up here. And Debbie again is really great. And I think that restorative justice piece is awesome. And I think it will open up their eyes to Ned, but rural mountains and the peak to peak area. But yeah, I'm happy to do, and I brought cards too, with my email address and stuff. And you guys are certainly welcome to reach out with questions too, if you want to check in about something or you have an idea. Like this idea with the homeless outreach, that was working. So from my solution focus point, I'm like, well, if it was working, we should keep doing it. And I know there's money and there was hiccups, it sounds like. So in my head, and of course it won't all happen right away, but yeah, I can definitely kind of find out. And I'm sure if Debbie is going to be moving forward or that program, I'm sure she'll probably show up here or I'll tell her she should. So.
And I apologize, I missed it. What's Debbie, who's she work for? Like, what's her position?
Debbie, she is the restorative justice manager and mediation specialist. It's like a slash in her job title.
For who?
Boulder County Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
So, I don't know where that's going. I was just going to throw out a resource. So when some kind of civil issue is going on that I can't handle, I can say, I can't do it, but here's somebody who can. So that was where I was starting with to figure out what that was about.
And maybe can I jump in on that? So I talked with Division Chief Chamberlain today, and we talked a little bit about the neighbor disputes, and he agreed that the restorative justice is appropriate. They take direct referrals. They could be a huge resource. So very cool that you've also are moving forward on that, because he did recommend it as well.
Thank you, Lynette. Any more questions for Lynette? Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have a nameplate. I don't want to hijack your meeting.
Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself for those online?
Absolutely, yeah. My name's Andrew Jocelyn. I'm the fire marshal for the Nederland Fire Protection District. I just wanted to make a comment that as a whole, from the departmental view, the feedback that I've gotten from our shift captains is that they're all thrilled that we have a resource like this in our community. We value community paramedicine, and often we don't have immediate solutions for people. So to have that resource is invaluable to us. So thank you. Looking forward to our relationship. I've got some stuff I want to talk to you about. So we'll swap cards.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
I was meeting with all the different captains at Lions to just talk to ships and such. So I'm absolutely happy to do that up here and just see what we can do to kind of help support you guys, because you're supporting the community, which, you know, it's just that big cycle of who all is supporting who. So yeah, absolutely happy to do that.
Great. Thanks. Thanks for your time.
Any more questions for Lynette?
This is Tanya. I have a question. So with the unhoused population, would you be a person that would be called if, say, like someone at the senior center who works there has a member coming in telling them they're unhoused and they're not getting any traction with EFA, they're not getting, they don't know where to go and they're confused and they've been on the phone for hours. Well, or that's just an example. It's a made up one, but I'm just saying, would that be appropriate for them to be calling you? Is that part of your job description or no?
Technically, no. I mean, not that that's not my job description, but what's going to end up happening, and just because it happened in Lions, is there's going to be probably a natural progression, because I know the aging person. She's going to email me and say, hey, Lynette, I've got this person. And so we're going to have to fine tune a little bit of some of those types of things. Technically, I am only utilized if it's a law enforcement contact, but again, I think things are just going to have kind of a natural progression, and it's probably very possible that I will know this person or I'll know of this person. Kelly and I from EFA also talk a lot because we share a lot of the same things. So I'll come to her and say, hey, I've got so and so, and she's like, oh, I'm working with them. It's like, oh, great. So now we can kind of tag team. So I don't know. I don't feel like that's a yes or no answer.
Right, but I mean, it would be good for them to call just because or email, because you do have so many resources and so many contacts that could make that easier.
Oh, yeah. So if it's
Probably
yeah. So again, with like a staff member, if they emailed me, I absolutely could give them some resources and direction with where to go. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for coming up here and working with us.
Oh, of course. I'm excited to be up here. So, yeah.
Any more questions for Lynette? If not, just say thanks. Appreciate your time and welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm probably gonna bow because I have to head down the canyon and get back home. So I appreciate the time. And again, you guys are absolutely free to email. If you are having, any experience with, you can just email me and I'll just figure it out. So it might be that it's a no, but I'll try and give you an option. So yeah, we'll figure it out. It'll be learning it all together, right?
You're getting rave reviews so far from everybody that I hear from.
Oh,
So thank you.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. So. So you're not going to run me out of town?
No. Lynette.
Okay.
Thanks, Lynette.
Thanks, Lynette. So we will now move on to our next discussion item, Streets Department presentation, starring Mark Hull.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Hall. I'm the streets manager at the town of Nederland. What I'm going to go ahead and present today is a kind of a two-piece presentation. I got some questions from the Board of Trustees that I'll be talking to at the end of my presentation. But to start, I'll be going over what I had dubbed my summer road improvement plan. This summer road improvement plan won't necessarily go just through 2023. The ending phase will definitely go quite a bit longer, which I'll talk to shortly. But so firstly, I wanted to talk about just kind of what the phases are, phases 1 through 4. And what I think that this plan is going to be designed to do is to extend the lifespan of our roads. It's going to reduce the frequency and the cost of maintenance for our roads. And in doing this, I want to also protect the unique and natural charm that makes our town so special. And I think a huge part of that is the amount of gravel roads that we do have here. I don't necessarily think that the entire town being paved is going to make it the type of town that we all know and love. So a huge part of that, though, is to be able to make these roads efficient and safe and stable. So phase 1 is definitely going to be all about the water and drainage problems that we have here in town. I'm sure everyone here is no stranger to that. And that's the most important part. In this presentation, I said that that's where we're going to be starting. I'm sure most of you have already seen most of the kind of shallow ditches that myself and my team have already started doing around town. I kind of jumped into that head first and tried to troubleshoot it. And I think maybe what I would like to do is bring in JVA, who is the consulting engineer for the town, and kind of get more feedback on how these drainage ditches should be built a little bit better. But I think we've gathered quite a bit of information with the ditches that we've dug thus far. Phase 2, after the drainage ditches, is going to be grading the roads correctly. Most of the roads in town are either what's called a super elevation, to where it slopes really high to one side and we can't necessarily get a drainage ditch on both sides or crown the road properly. And then also a lot of the roads in town are very flat, so they don't have a crown in the road. And what the crown is having a high center and then being able to slope it on either side, so the water would then drain off of the road and not stay on the road, which would cause potholes and then icing in the winter. So that would be phase number 2. And phase number 3 is kind of goes in conjunction with phase number 2. Normally when we're grading roads, we're adding what's called aggregate, which is this makeup of sand, gravel, and stone. It's kind of the additive that goes on top of the road, which is going to give us better compaction. It's going to allow the roads to be a lot more stable and also to give us a lot more dust mitigation that we don't really have around town at the moment. So phase 2 and 3 kind of go in conjunction together, but I definitely wanted to touch on the fact that most of the roads in town are not graded correctly, and that's where we need to get to. And lastly, phase number 4 is another thing that I'll lean on JVA for, is getting kind of a consensus of which residents in town would need a driveway culvert in order to make our drainage infrastructure a lot better. Right now, I would say maybe less than 50% of residents have a driveway culvert. So most of our drainage ditches either go to nowhere and then wash across these driveways and then kind of just make their own little rivers and through the roads. And, you know, we have plenty of problems that come from that. So I would definitely lean heavily on JVA in that final phase, which is what I think makes this no longer just summer 2023. This is going to be a much larger project as far as the culverts go. So jumping into phase 1, as I talked about, you've already seen the drainage ditches that I and my team have started to dig around town. The ditches that we're utilizing for the most part now is what's called a swale, which is just shallow trenches. These trenches that we have dug have given us a pretty good understanding of which areas of town are flowing the most as far as runoff goes, which areas of town have these natural springs that have sprung up and spring up all over town. And these run what feels like all year long. So having these ditches that we need is going to be a huge part of preserving our roads, and finding these springs all around town is turning into what feels like a pretty big issue right now. So I think we've learned a lot from the drainage ditches that we've dug, but I also want to go ahead and lean on JVA, as I said before, to get more of the expertise from the civil side on what actually is going to work and where these ditches really need to be more permanent. So any of the swales you see around town, there's a chance that they might not be permanent, and we'll go back in and when we're grading the roads, kind of get rid of the ones that don't make sense. So that's, don't want to delve too far into the drainage ditches. I think I was pretty thorough in each one of these slides, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory what these ditches are going to be. So I will speak to some of the benefits I think that come from the drainage issues, or the drainage issues that we will plan to fix. Firstly, these drainage ditches are going to help prevent road and property damage. A big part of the reason why I wanted to prioritize the drainage ditches first is a lot of property owners have complaints about this water jumping over the ditch lines, coming through their properties and washing out a lot of the homes that have basements or just, garages that are in that lowland, and all this property damage that happens for them is a huge thing I want to mitigate. So that would say the first benefit is that. Secondly, these ditches help mitigate flooding during the heavy rainfall that happens when seems like these flash floods that are coming through town, especially on these roads that we have a lot more of a slope to, like Bridge Street or Stinky Gulch. These areas wash out pretty heavily. Lastly, well-managed water flow helps protect the quality of our local water bodies by reducing the amount of sediment and pollutants being carried into them. So by not constantly having all this water washing over the road and keeping it in the ditches, we'll have a lot cleaner water that's going to be going and being reclaimed at some point in time. So I think that's super important for us. I think that's pretty much the biggest benefits for phase one. And moving into phase two, when we're talking about grading the roads, as everyone knows, and what the board had voted on is getting our new motor grader for the town, which I just got a call today that it's finally been completed with all the additives we wanted added onto it, and it should be delivered, I think, next week. So grading these gravel roads that we have in town and getting the correct slope that we want is going to allow no more water piling up inside of the road. When we don't have water standing on the road, we don't have to worry about potholes. We don't have to worry about the rutting, the erosion, any of this washout that we have a huge problem with right now. With having the roads graded correctly, I think we're already going to see a huge benefit. But on top of that, when we want to talk about stability and then the dust mitigation is what will then move into phase three, or maybe phase two will be in conjunction with phase three, depending on how I want to do it. Phase three is adding the aggregate, which is a huge part of making the road stable and non-deformable. So what we want to add more depth to the roads. Right now we have most of our roads are kind of natural soil with not much road base added onto there. By adding this road base, which is the aggregate that we use for grading all of our gravel roads, is going to be a nice mixture of several sizes of stones, sand, and stone. And by adding all these coarse and fine materials together, as we water the road and we add these to the road, we can compact that down and make them pretty stable, pretty easy to drive on. And I think it's going to be huge for us going forward. A lot of the roads in town that we have now, especially in the Big Springs area, we have a lot of traffic that goes through there, which definitely kicks up a lot of the dust in that drier area. And I think adding more road base to that will help minimize the dust, but also we'll be looking at that kind of dust suppressant as well that we have budgeted for the streets budget. But I think it's a huge part is adding this road base first, and then that way when we do add this dust suppressant, it will add in with this aggregate and make it work a lot better than just on natural soil. Some of the benefits that could come from phase three that I didn't talk to is being able to have these roads that will be easily maintained. So over the course of time, we won't need to consistently just regrade the road. And so we'll be able to go back and just maintain it, which might be adding in some more aggregate, but then just cutting the road and making it, it would be very short. It would be very cost effective as compared to right now, every road in town that needs to be graded heavily, and then more road base added because all the road base washes out and then washes through the ditches. So I think that's a really important part going forward. From a budgetary standpoint, we'd be able to save more money on line items like road base and dust suppressant even in the future. Leading into our last phase, which is kind of, I would say, the biggest undertaking for sure, as I've noticed thus far, is driveway culverts. Working with JVA, I'll be meeting with Nathan on Thursday, and we'll be kind of going around town and trying to at least get an understanding of what the view for the streets team looks like, trying to figure out which residents in town would need a driveway culvert, and then which ditch lines would make the most sense to get water from point A to point B, but without washing out the roads. So over the course of however long that would take, the biggest part would be bringing in these culverts for residents that need them, being able to excavate the trench across the driveway, and then being able to get these culverts in. And then that way it would work in conjunction with the drainage ditches that we've already built. I think there's a few benefits that would come from that from an infrastructure standpoint. I think it's big that we protect the driveways for the residents in town, especially as we get into those winter months where if their driveway was washed out all summer long, now they have a half a car length to try to pull out of their driveway in the snow. So I think it's important that we minimize water damage and erosion, and these driveway culverts I think would be a huge benefit to residents. By facilitating efficient water flow, they also enhance the functionality of our newly constructed drainage system, which would be the drainage ditches we are digging from phase 1. Right now, I don't feel as though we have a very sustainable or reliable drainage system. I'm sure it's pretty evident, and I would like at the end of all 4 phases to be able to say that we do. It's important for me. I think it's important for my team, and I would say that it's also important for the Board of Trustees and the rest of the staff. Well-installed driveway culverts can add an aesthetic appeal for residences as well. I think a lot of culverts around town are well landscaped and they're incorporated into the overall look and feel of the property, and I think it adds value in more ways than just one. In sum, phase 4 is a vital step in ensuring that the improvements we make in the earlier phases are fully capitalized upon. It represents our commitment to every resident, ensuring that their homes are just as protected as our shared roads. So looking ahead and kind of summarizing what it is that I went over, I would like to talk about where we're heading with all of this. We've dug into the details of drainage ditches, talked about the nitty-gritty of grading roads, touched on the importance of adding aggregates, and dived into driveway culverts. But let's zoom out and take a look at the bigger picture. What does this mean for our beloved town? First up, we're going to have some seriously solid roads. We're not just focused on solving today's issues, we're laying down the groundwork for the future. With the right drainage, grading, and aggregates, we're ensuring our roads can handle anything Mother Nature decides to throw our way. Next, we're tackling the money stuff. By doing things the right way from the start, we're going to save ourselves from future headaches and, more importantly, future maintenance costs. That's more cash in the pocket of our community that we can invest in more awesome things. We're not forgetting our green credentials either. By managing our water more efficiently and preventing erosion, we're preserving the gorgeous natural landscape that makes our town a truly special place to live. But let's be real, this is just the beginning. Our plan doesn't end here. We'll keep a keen eye on our roads, carrying out regular checks and tweaks where needed. This 4-phase plan is just the kickoff of a brighter future for Netherlands roads, and I'm stoked to steer this ship. And as many of you have noticed, we already have the ball rolling. Our sleeves are rolled up, the shovels are out, and phase 1 is underway as we speak. This journey isn't going to be a cruise on a freshly paved highway. There will be bumps along the way, but together we can navigate those challenges and make our roads something we can all be proud of. I definitely wanted to kind of breeze through that, so I wanted to open up this ending part just for questions from anyone who has them, and then I would like to jump into the Board of Trustees questions.
You mentioned culverts. Are they concrete culverts at the foot of the driveway, or what are you thinking?
Most of the culverts right now that we're installing are all the corrugated metal pipe.
Uh-huh.
A lot easier to find some good dimensions and of these pipes themselves, especially when we're trying to figure out what diameter culvert we want to use in certain sections of town. We want to make sure that they're not too small to where they can't take on the water flow, but also not so big that now we have high energy water that's going to wash out the roads entirely.
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot easier to kind of buy a couple different diameters of the corrugated metal pipe as opposed to the concrete ones. They're a lot easier to kind of
Mhm.
use around town as well.
And do the residents pay, or does town pay for something
I
like
think
that?
that's going to be something we'll have to discuss as we move forward. It's kind of a plan that's in its infancy. So
Uh-huh.
we definitely have the fee schedule we'll have to look to and decide on how we're going to handle that.
And if I can just jump in on that question, so the current town code does allow the town to require residents at their own cost to install culverts or choose to pay town to do it. Under IIJA funding, actually, there is opportunities for culvert, and so we're really looking at a large scale, kind of like your metering project, where we say you need this, and we also, Mark and I have talked a bit about securing the funding to do it so that it's not as painful to seek compliance if we can provide that support. And so that is a part of IIJA that we're very interested in pursuing funding for.
Great. And we've got, as I remember, around 700 homes. And you think about 50% of them are going to need culverts.
That was just a guess, but I would say that just from the road grading experience I have thus far in the town,
Uh-huh.
the drainage issues we have is from the most residents not having driveway culverts. I think it was implemented into the code that very recently that new builds would need driveway culverts, but it's definitely not something of the past.
Great. And the springs you mentioned, how many are we talking about? Are they coming up in the middle of the street, or what's going on?
Yep. So three big ones that I can point to right now is the one that's at the top of Stinky Gulch. That's been
Mhm.
there for as long as I know for sure. One new one just happened on West 3rd that seems to be flowing quite heavily. And then also another one I think that has been pretty historic on Barker, if I remember correctly. That one's been there for a while.
Oh yeah,
so-
that's mine.
Yeah. So yeah, these ones.
Yeah, I mean, culverts thing. I mean, what happened to us this year was we have a culvert, but our driveway was flooding a couple of years ago, so the culvert was kind of irrelevant because the driveway was just flooding right into the street, right, and washing the street away. Jesse and his team actually came in and fixed that, and it's still fixed. But then what happened upstream from us, right? Even though we have the driveway culvert, like it changed direction this year, right? So now it's not actually going into the ditch anymore. It's going just to the side and getting back on the road again. So I think it's going to be a very complicated issue. I don't think it's just as simple as, each house having that one culvert, but making sure that the house above has the correct drainage as well. And the house
Absolutely.
above that, and then the house, I mean, it just goes on and on.
Because you guys are right next to the Malamed house as well,
Indeed.
which is,
Oh, we
What
get
we-
all the silt.
which
Yeah.
is, yeah, it flows downstream like you're
Mhm.
saying. So it's not just your property, it's everyone around you.
Yeah.
But you have plenty of rainy days to bring Nathan back.
Oh, yeah. It's yeah, I mean, it's going to be a huge undertaking. I don't think it's lost on anyone for that, but it is important to me to make sure that these roads are safe and stable for everyone. So
I'm really glad you're doing this, because, yeah, this is long overdue, and you're taking a systems approach, in figuring out what has to be dealt with now and what doesn't. Yeah, each one of the ones you talk about, are with us every year. There's no surprise. But there's an engineering solution to each of them.
I agree.
And do we have the budget to consult JVA on all the things that you need to?
Yeah, we have a
We
budget.
do, okay.
Although if you're offering more money, we'll always take it.
Easy now.
No,
We're
those-
gonna have a block party when your equipment gets here.
That would be nice.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be here soon, hopefully. All right, so if we don't have any more questions, I'll just address the Board of Trustees questions that were sent in. I'll probably read these verbatim just because I do think that they kind of are pretty thorough and hopefully they give you all the feedback that you were looking for. The first question is, I'd like to hear the game plan for paving Lower Big Springs Road up to the switchback. Sierra, which is a town resident who had sent in an email to the board, says if Sierra is correct regarding the 500 plus cars per day, assuming so, how does that compare to other paving priorities and traffic uses? My answer was, when it comes to paving Lower Big Springs Road up to the switchback, we're fully aware of the significance of this project given the daily traffic volume. To address this need, we're strategically allocating our asphalt budget to cover the paving of this road. We've already reached out to several contractors for quotes and are assessing our options to ensure a high-quality result that falls within our budget. After a thorough review of these quotes and considering all necessary factors, we'll move forward with the contractor who offers the best balance of cost effectiveness, experience, and quality workmanship. This is a high priority project for us, and we're confident that it aligns with both our immediate and long-term objectives for our road infrastructure. The second question that came in, what's the professional development plan for Mark and his staff so we're maximizing the return on investment on the new equipment? The answer I provided is, as for professional development, we're planning a comprehensive training schedule that will cover the use of the new equipment, safety protocols, and maintenance techniques. Our aim is to maximize the ROI on the new equipment while boosting the team's skill set. And with that, we're also utilizing the local institutions like LTAP, which is the Local Technical Assistance Program for industry experts for workshops and hands-on training sessions. The third question, what are some potential budgetary requests Mark can make from us as the Board of Trustees to best set him and his team up for success? I answered, to set our team up for success, there could be a few potential budgetary requests. These may include funds for ongoing training and development, and possibly looking toward budgeting for the massive infrastructure improvement which culvert purchases would cost. I will say that the budgetary request for any of the training and development at the moment seems as though we've got pretty well handled, but it is something that is important for me for staff development is the training that I think the streets team could definitely benefit from. The next question was, does Mark have a vision and or goals in mind for streets in his department? If so, please share. My vision for the streets department is a straightforward one. We aspire to elevate our team to the level of subject matter experts and devote our energy and resources to rectify the issues surrounding our town's roads and drainage systems. We're acutely aware that some areas have unfortunately been overlooked or dismissed as beyond repair in the past. However, we're ready to change that narrative. We strive to become more than just a maintenance team. We aim to be innovators and problem solvers capable of turning even the most challenging situations around. Each of us is committed to the restoration, renovation, and revival of our town's infrastructure. Yet my vision extends beyond just physical infrastructure. I'm keen to change the perception of our department, to show our town that we're more than just a group of workers. We're a team of dedicated professionals who are constantly learning, growing, and evolving. The criticism from the public has been challenging, but we're taking it as an opportunity to learn, to improve, and ultimately to impress our community. We hope to turn the tide of the public sentiment, transforming skepticism into support, negativity into enthusiasm, and proving that our team is indeed a valuable asset to the town. The next question from the Board of Trustees is, what is the primary focus for this year and how is it going? This year, our focus is twofold. On one hand, we're driving forward with our ambitious 4-phase road plan. We've hit the ground running with phase 1 and are excited about the progress we're making. Each completed ditch, each graded road is another step towards a more stable and robust infrastructure for Nederland. On the other hand, we're putting a heavy emphasis on staff development. We believe in the power of learning and growth. 2 members of our team have already attended the LTAP motor grader training in Gunnison. This has provided them with invaluable skills and knowledge that they're now bringing back to our department and implementing in their work. To put it simply, our focus this year is to build better roads, build stronger teams, and build a streets department that is skilled, efficient, and ready to face any challenge that comes its way. The next question, we as the officials representing the general public, how can the BOT be more supportive of Mark's success? The board plays a critical role in our success. While approving budgets is a key part, your support goes much deeper. It's about backing our vision and our initiatives. We welcome public endorsements from the board as it would help us in shifting the town's perception of our department. Such support not only bolsters our team, but also assures the community that we are all committed to enhancing our town. We're thankful for the past recognitions and appreciation you've shown to our team. It truly makes a difference. Continuing to acknowledge our team's progress and improvements can significantly boost morale and demonstrate to the public the strides we're making. Ultimately, your belief in us, your guidance, and your vocal support can significantly shape our department and the work we do. Your ongoing support is a testament to the hard work and dedication of our team and goes a long way in encouraging us to strive for more. I think this is the final question. It was, people are too hard on the streets department and speak about their lack of experience. My question is, what does Mark and the streets department need from the BOT to help provide his team with that experience? Of course, better compensation and benefits and also training. And can Mark give us specifics on the types of training, mentoring, etc. that he needs to provide for his team? My answer was the support we seek from the BOT is multifaceted. It involves approving and endorsing training and development initiatives, revising compensation and benefits if needed, actively participating in our public engagement efforts, and acknowledging our team's efforts and improvements. These actions would undoubtedly provide our team with the experience and confidence they need to excel in their roles and serve our town effectively. That was the last question.
I address
you.
this to the two of you. This is one thing. There's some good news going on all over town. I'm presuming Peter's plugged into it and can get the word out.
Yeah, so Engagement HQ has that streets and sidewalks, and so worked together with Mark and Nikki to have the projects featured on there and then continuous updates. And so not only do I meet with Mark weekly and also Peter, but also connecting them directly. But that is our goal. You know, I think so much of our challenge is that, you know, especially Mark is like, I'm just out there doing it. We don't think about talking about what we're doing. And so Peter will play such a big role in helping to create that narrative so that Mark can keep doing what he's doing, but we're also sharing outwardly with the public what's happening. That Gunnison training, I really appreciated that Mark shared a photo with me that I then shared with Peter, and we quickly posted it. And that was really big for us to have an opportunity to do a shout out to that department. And I personally am so thankful for Mark and all that Mark has done and how much he prioritizes his team above all. It's a philosophy I believe strongly in, and so does he. And so his team is incredible. It's a fully staffed team, and I don't remember last time Streets ever was fully staffed. And I think a lot of that is testament to just Mark's strong leadership. And then also he has a vision. So his team knows what to do every single day. They know what's ahead of them. And that also, I think, will lead to that longevity. So a lot of kudos to Mark and everything Mark is doing.
Amen. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Go like crazy for the few weeks we have left.
Yeah, no, seriously.
I appreciate it. And thanks for answering each of our questions individually. I guess, I mean, one thing, and Jesse and I were talking about this a couple days ago, I think, like what can we do to kind of take some of the heat even, you know, if that's, I mean, Brandon's told me the other day that, you know, you guys, town staff will go on Facebook and read, you know, and these complaints and stuff. And part of me is like, well, do yourself a favor and stay off Facebook. First of all, I do. But what can we do to, I mean, like, well, I don't know, like what can be done to kind of channel, because ultimately we should take the, you know, we don't directly supervise town staff, but at the same time, we do directly supervise you, but what can we do to kind of take some of this on so there's not this burnout of people just, you know, getting personal about it and ripping into people who are working hard and you know, just
Maybe I can jump in and Mark,
shaming
please
them and
check-
making them feel
chime in after
terrible.
me. But, I think for Peter's role, it's not to chase the negativity and it's not to chase the comments. That's not his responsibility. And so we're not out there on Ned Heads and Ned Talk correcting all the poor statements. But I think historically we have had board members jump in and say, hey, that's not quite right. Those who choose to use social media choose to take those moments to educate. And I think that's one way to help. I also think Trustee Severs has done a great job of, reposting our posts, putting it out there into your own network. But I think more than anything, and the politest way I can say this is don't get involved. I think then when someone comes to complain to you and you give them this weight, they really have to work with Mark. He's beyond responsive. He calls everyone back. He emails everyone back. You witnessed the incredible articulation in the recent Big Springs. I think he's demonstrating in so many ways that he is beyond responsive. And I think that's where it gets a little challenging, is when board members try to step in the way instead of letting Mark communicate. And if Mark does say, this isn't a priority, that there's respect and understanding that he's not doing it just to be rude. He's doing it because there's a plan, there's a phase. And his team can't be rushing out to everyone who calls him and says, oh, but my driveway, or oh, but my this. He has a plan, and I just think there has to be a lot of respect that he is the subject matter expert. He and his team are doing what they need to be doing and just directing people back, because Mark is, of all the department heads, I would say one of the most responsive and making sure that everyone is heard and everyone is communicated back to.
So if someone comes to us personally and complains, are we to say,
Call Mark.
call Mark, like
Email
really, don't let us be the middle people?
Right.
So you're saying really, we just should be directing things.
But I think, I think a lot of that is also just saying, please talk to Mark, but do so in a respectful manner. Like
Yeah.
maybe you can set up those boundaries. But I think that a lot of times if someone feels like they have the board at their kind of disposal, it's now comes across in almost a bit more challenging way, because it's like, oh, well, I talked to Mayor Billy and he said. I think you just have to say, please contact the streets department and they will share with you how they can support. And Mark, I don't know if I'm totally off base here, but I feel like we've talked about this enough that, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you stated everything that I would have said. I think it's really important to know that any complaint that's going to come in is going to be heard, and I make it an effort to always at least respond to everyone as I can. I try to call everyone back when I get a voicemail. I try to respond to every email. I try to stop and talk to those that want to talk to me on the side of the road. At any point in time, I'm trying to respond to everything, and I think it goes a long way when someone does complain to a member of the board to kind of allow me to field that and deem it a priority if I do think so. A lot of times things are conflated in a way that it makes it seem as though an issue is this grandiose thing, when at the end of the day it's really not. I mean, saying that, just a testament to a couple of different things I've heard of like these potholes that are ruining people's cars, and then I get there and it's less than an inch deep, or an insurmountable amount of snow in front of someone's home when plowing happens. Like these complaints that come in that seem like there are these huge issues, and then when they are identified and seen, aren't a huge priority. So for me to be able to field all of these complaints, to be able to send my team out there and then decide whether or not it's a priority, I think it becomes huge when the board stands by that. Says that Mark knows what he's doing, his team knows what he's doing, and we stand by him in those moments. I think that's important.
And I think one of the best examples is Big Springs. Obviously a lot of board members did get involved in Big Springs, and we recognize that. But I know I talked in detail with Trustee Severs about this, is let it be Mark's decision. And Mark did his due diligence, really looked through it, decided, yes, we could move around some resources and make this happen. But I felt like that was Mark's decision and Mark's decision alone. And I would stand by Mark, whatever he decided. And my expectation would be, or hope would be, the board would as well. But I had very open discussions with many of you about your feelings or your thoughts about this, which really helped to guide our discussion. But really, my statement kept being, he is the person we all hired for this role. He is the manager of the streets department, and really needs to be able to kind of command that department and have that trust and faith of everybody behind him, that he has such a well laid out plan that we just back it constantly and just direct everyone to him. And We too at Town Hall try to support him if we have the information. And, we don't want to tie up Mark so he's in the office 24/7, but just doing our best to continue to communicate his message and his efforts.
Mark, do you feel like some of the questions that you get from residents are repetitive? Like feels like sometimes Groundhog Day, you're answering the same questions?
Yeah, but I do think they're warranted. I do think that it's in a small community like we have. I don't mind hearing the complaints because whoever is talking to me, it's huge to them, whatever it is that they have to say. It does mean something to them. They aren't just necessarily saying things to just say things. If that pothole has been in front of their house for a week, it's important to them that we fill that pothole. Now, by me being able to field that and let them know all of the other things that we have on our list and that we do plan to get there whenever it comes up, it's the redundancies or the repetitiveness of the complaints is not a big deal to me.
Right. But at the same time, what we have now is this opportunity with the streets project is that we can capture what some of those questions are that you're getting asked, and we roll that into a frequently asked questions. And that minimizes the amount of time that you're having to respond if we can start directing people to that streets project, right? So it gets codified in one source of truth. Just as a way to help you out more. The other thing I would say, Miranda, when you were talking about we're not fielding the questions or we're not scanning social media and responding, agree. And I would also say, though, those are data points. So for instance, there was a post recently on, there's not a solid yellow line. Great education moment on that streets project to say that's a CDOT piece. And here's where they're anticipating, addressing that. Even if it's a year and a half from now, it's still an opportunity, right, for us, even if we're not responding in social media, totally agree, but we can start to be more proactive, take those data points, categorize them, respond to them in Engagement HQ, and then post that, right, as well as feedback that you're getting, responses that you're having to make, and start driving people to that streets project.
Just to follow up on this conversation a little, is that often folks will come to me with a concern after they have gotten a response from town staff that they maybe aren't happy with, right? Rather than the other way around. We've been talking about the other way around, like they come to BOT first and then you say, oh, go talk to Mark. But usually, at least in my experiences, I talk to Mark, thinks my 1-inch pothole isn't deep enough to warrant, being a top priority. Can you make it a top priority? BOT person. And I think that's where, I think it's fine to express sympathy, but to then say, well, did you talk to Mark? Oh, you did talk to Mark. Well, I'm not involved in the day-to-day management of town staff. Mark has a streets plan. He's gonna get to it, I'm sure, but that's not my role, right? To go and call Mark and say, hey, you got to do this because I'm on the BOT, right? It doesn't work that way. So I think it's also a nice moment to kind of explain what the role of a trustee even is, right? Because I don't think everyone is that clear on what it is that we're here to do, which is not to field complaints and do day-to-day management of town staff, which I don't think everyone is that clear on. So
no, it's absolutely. In fact, we had to clarify it in an email change just even recently. You can go to Peter for nothing, it's you have to bring it back to Miranda.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, it seems obvious, but I don't know that it's so obvious. So it feels like between February and now, there's a lot of complaints about the potholes and everything because there hasn't been grading out yet, right? And yet I'm sure there are reasons why you can't go out and fill potholes or grade the site or grade the roads when it's raining or snow. I'm sure there are reasons.
Absolutely.
But we don't communicate that. But there's just this constant there's so many potholes. Yes. And then come June when, there's some sunshine and it's not raining torrentially, we can get out there and do that. But, it seems like obvious things that are in your brain may not be so obvious to some of our residents. And it might be worthwhile to pull some of the brain juice and power that's inside of your head because it's not so obvious to some of our residents.
Absolutely.
No.
I wonder if at the very top of the fact that you were talking about, Nicole, that we could put something along the lines of, I mean, I'm trying to think of how to nicely put this, but to tell the residents to slow down a little bit on certain dirt roads would be hugely beneficial, I think, not just to Mark, but to the neighbors who live right off those corners. So just
Well, we did have an 8-year-old here at our town hall suggest speed cameras, and it sounds like there's some
Troy
movement.
and I are looking into them.
Yes.
Leo
Love it.
suggested would solve a lot of problems. Yeah.
We may or may not have had conversations about it in our own household. I'm just saying.
But I
Any-
don't think
any-
those points can be belabored enough sometimes, though. I think sometimes people forget to add the common sense factor into a lot of these conversations. And at risk of getting myself entangled in something I don't mean to, sometimes I feel at liberty to just mention that, like I'm now publicly saying that we all have responsibilities in curating a nice and safe town. So I don't think that's stepping out of the bounds of what we're supposed to do here, personally.
Thanks, John. I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting. I know, it's already about 10. We still have one more information item, 3 action items ahead of us. I'm hoping folks have some endurance going tonight, just because we had some quality public engagement time, and it's going to be 3 weeks till our next meeting, so we got time to rest. So I'd like to make a motion to extend till 10:30.
I guess I'll be the one to second that.
Thank you, John.
I'm
Casey, I was
looking
gonna
at the
wait for,
faces in the room.
Go ahead.
Sorry, guys.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay. Trustee Coombs Ismail,
No.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Trustee Mountain,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
No.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
and then Mayor Pro Tem Mahold has left the room, but it would not affect the outcome.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Did you say how
Right,
long
there
you,
he is.
you were going to extend, Billy?
10:30.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold, we're taking a vote on, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
He voted yes for the
5-2.
record.
It was already at 5. It was already at 4. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Any more questions for Mark? Thanks, Mark. That was a great presentation. Thanks for taking the time to answer our questions.
Yeah, thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and move into,
I wanted to ask a couple of questions of Mark.
oh crap, I didn't hear you. I said any questions, Mark, and I didn't hear it.
I didn't get the question. So first of all, thanks so much, Mark. Really appreciate all your hard work. And yeah, just great presentation.
Thank you.
And really proud to have you taking care of our streets and you and your team. And yeah, just really, really grateful. Thank you for answering all those questions as well. And I guess I wanted to just offer an alternative model for fielding the public's complaints about potholes and see if it might align with something that feels good. Because so I guess what I am curious to explore conceptually a little bit with you and Miranda and the rest of the board is just the notion that you and your team are a treasure to us as a town and to the public. And to the extent that fielding complaints about a 1-inch deep pothole bums you out or is unpleasant and maybe a draining aspect of your job, I would like to rethink how we're handling input from the public and how we're fielding that. And it was my theory that, you know, we are elected and appointed to represent the public as BOT members. And then we, in turn around and we hire Miranda, or her role, to fulfill the role of managing the town and the staff of the town. And so I really appreciate, Miranda, what you've been consistent with us in terms of messaging around, you know, come to you, don't come to Mark or your department heads. I think that's a really healthy way for us to have good organizational structure. And I know I've messed that up a handful of times, and it's not for lack of appreciation of that model and trying to do that better. So with all that said, you know, I think the situation with the paving of Big Springs is a fine example where, you know, probably I know that the folks there who really wanted to get that paved, they went to Emmett initially and didn't get the answer they wanted. Then they came to me, and they may have come to me prior to me being on the BOT just as an excavator. And but then when I got on the BOT, they brought it up with me again. And then I went to Miranda, and I think I really did practice having discipline about not going to Mark about that, even though I would like to talk to you more, but just because, you know, we like dirt. But you know, I appreciate that, you know, talking to you, Miranda, was the right way to do it. And it was also, I feel, constructive that we, you know, kind of really, I feel like we kind of debated it pretty actively as in terms of the pros and cons and whatnot. And then for me, that was sufficient. And I felt like after I had a chance to make all my arguments and you took them in, you gave me counterpoints, and we kind of, you know, wrestled it a little bit. And felt that was constructive and enjoyable and good. And then I was confident that you would then just do whatever you felt was right. And I, you know, just from knowing you, I knew that you would work with Mark in a way that would be similar, where you would respect his ultimate decision. And so I guess what I'm saying is, I think that having the forum for Peter to take input that way is really good. And then having us as BOT members come to you when people are complaining to us is also really good. And then we can debate, we can argue, and then we can just we can have confidence in you that you've heard our points and that you will handle it with your staff in the way that you feel is appropriate for the scenario. And then my hope would be that we could insulate and protect our precious town staff and department heads from not having to deal with the multitude, because that's ultimately what we're supposed to be, as representatives of the multitude, so that, you know, ideally Mark and the rest of the department heads and staff don't have to respond to every one of those complaints. You know, as a trustee, I would really rather not Mark respond to those complaints as opposed to leading his team and filling potholes. So I just wanted to offer that as an alternative approach. That I don't think we should decide on that now, but I would like for you all to consider that as an opportunity, and something that I, for one, would be perfectly willing to field more complaints from the public.
Yeah, I will say that, and I wish you all were witness to Trustee Sears and I's discussion. It was like 45 minutes of going back and forth about just this Big Springs, and really we both walked away with, okay, it's Mark's decision. And then I went to Mark at our next one-on-one and we talked about it. But it really was this healthy dynamic that Mark was going to decide, but he was going to hear that feedback through me after we've had a chance to talk, because I do feel like I can be a good advocate for Mark and understanding what he's working on. But you know, again, it's always going to be his decision. So I very much respect that model, you know, if it can be replicated. And so perhaps we can talk a little bit more about how that worked, because I don't know how you felt, Mark, but I really felt like we had a lot of time to think through it and talk through it instead of just rushing out pave something. Mark really did his due diligence. And then also I was able to hear some of the concerns and feedback from the board. I felt like that was a great outcome, and didn't feel like it was a directive that was from the board. There was support, of course, for it, but ultimately Mark was the one who took the ball and ran with it.
So I think food for thought more than anything, and something I don't think, again, that we'll need to resolve now, but I do want to ensure that you're not getting bummed out by the public and public input, because I really appreciate your hard work, and I hope that that can, come with some, insulation against anyone who might be complaining. So
Yeah, thank you.
and then I also was just real curious to know sort of kind of this is an easy one, I think, but just how are you feeling when the rain is falling like crazy and the ditches are all flooding, and does your heart drop, or do you feel like you're frothing to get out there? And like, just tell me about your emotional reaction to these big rainstorms that we've been getting when it's raining.
Yeah, I think for me, it was really important taking this position in the winter time where I knew it was just going to be plow operations. I think from that moment that I got this position, I was excited to start summer. I was excited to get out there and start grading roads, especially with the new equipment, and to be able to start implementing the plan that I have in place. And this heavy rainfall, I feel as though is putting us at a setback, and can't really grade mud. It's impossible. So when we are getting the heavy rainfall, the biggest thing that I'm feeling is which ditch in town is going to flood over, and then which road in town is going to get completely washed out. And that's pretty much what we do. We just drive around and attempt to find which ditch is going to flood over. And that's what we've been combating this entire time is all the heavy rainfall. So it's stressful, but I think it's rewarding when we get one fixed and then can move on to the next one.
Yeah, I like how the rain gives us instant feedback on how the drainage system is working.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely, it's a good learning curve that I'm going through now. It doesn't seem as though any of the drainage makes sense, but there's no real perfect way to do it right now either. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Good questions. Any more questions for Mark? If not, we can go on to our last.
I don't think Tom technically already did this.
Okay, great. That's what I was
As long as
kind
Macy's
of open to.
okay.
Yeah.
Just quick appreciation, of course, for Macy, who had to help coordinate everything with Karen, and get the hearing all set up. And I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Mahold. I think it was a great hearing. I think Karen did a fabulous job being fair, and allowing the process to unfold pretty organically. But without Macy's help, we wouldn't have gotten here. So thank you, Macy, for all your work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Macy. And yeah, thanks, Tom, for recapping that earlier. That's perfect. All right. So we'll go ahead into our action items.
And I'd like to make a request, since we're running out of time. We have Marshall Jocelyn here, who is here for the address sign. I'd like to recommend that you do that. However, all 3 action items were publicly noticed, so before you adjourn, you do need to move them to a date certain, the fence and the solar. But I'd love to try to get address done, so Andrew doesn't have to come back.
9.2
And Britt
coming down.
Britt Twink is online with us. She's on the East Coast, so it's midnight there.
Oh, hey,
I think, and so I think she's there. I know she might have dropped off for a minute, so I don't know if Britt's back quite yet. If
So I
not,
think,
I will take this.
yeah, let's go. Yeah, thanks. How about if Andrew and Miranda and Britt chime in if you can hear us?
Yeah, I think she will come back in a moment. So, just to introduce this address sign code. So, really kind of came to us from Marshall Jocelyn. So Marshall Jocelyn, our fire marshal, he reached out and just said, hey, we have to do something about address signs. And this really comes from them struggling to find homes. I mean, when they go out to homes and there's no adequate address signage, it could be a life or death situation. I mean, it is a dire matter. So while we do have a sign code related to addressing, just really feeling like it needed to be a bit more robust. So Marshall Jocelyn offered some recommendations, also created this nifty flyer I'm about to share, but I'd love to turn it over to you, Andrew, to maybe just run through why these key requirements are so important.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your time. I'll speed through this as quickly as I can. But basically, at the beginning of the year and in the spring, we had a few calls. One of them was CPR in progress, and we were unable to find the home, which was delayed life-saving care. And that was a wake-up call. This direction came from the chief. What can we do about this? And so I started looking into address code, and seeing, instead of just coming up with a solution, I wanted to come up with a great solution. And I looked extensively at what are our neighbors doing? What does the county require? What does wildfire partners want? What does the fire code say? What does the town say? And I kind of combined all those efforts into what this flyer, is it behind me? Yep. The key things of the code is we want it to be reflective so we can see it at night. The 4-inch characters is that comes from the IFC, which was adopted by the town. So 4-inch characters, half-inch
Next one.
stroke, which is the thickness. White characters on green background. That was something that was kind of debated, but it seems to be what is universally used in our area regardless. And so instead of trying to put in what I would prefer to have, which would be something, an inorganic color, something like blue is more visible. It sticks out more in a forest area. But I think this is something that the county supports as well, is the green or the white on green. It's what we see in our area a lot. And I wanted to acknowledge that. So it's better than nothing. And if it's reflective, it sticks out. So not a big issue. Another big thing is we see a lot of good signs attached to a dead tree or a mailbox. And the unfortunate thing with that is those things fall over. If there's a wildland fire, those posts could burn down. And now we no longer know what we're looking at. So if you attach it to a non-combustible means like a metal sign or a post, a U post or a T post, it's much more solid. It's more guaranteed to be weatherproof, if you will. The other thing was being able to see it as you're driving a rather large apparatus. So that's where the 4 to 6 feet above the grade of the road comes from. And then we've kind of had some issues also where you've got a sign, but you can't see it from either direction. And even if it's a one-way road, it's important that it's visible from all directions, all flow of traffic, because we might be going down a one-way road, but if we miss it, and we're running emergent, we're going to turn around and go the wrong way down the one-way road to get to your home. So every sign should be visible from all directions. So that's kind of a summary of the code itself. I think it's a good summary of the code changes that we've kind of put forward as well. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
So this applies to the Nederland Fire District, which is substantially bigger than town, but I
Yeah.
presume it would be identical requirements.
Absolutely, yeah. So the town code mirrors exactly what we're requesting for the rest of the district.
Perfect. Okay. And then legislatively, how do you do it with the rest of the district? Do you have to go through the county?
So the interesting thing is that this is all adopted fire code.
Mhm.
So these requirements meet basically exactly what our fire code says anyways. And the county's requirement is that you follow what the AHJ says. And so at this point, we're just going to make a proclamation that this is what we say. But we want to do it in unison with all of our communities, including Eldora, Town of Nederland. And so I feel like having something that's universal is important. Matter of fact, since I've submitted this code to the town, we've had our neighbor in Sugarloaf wanting to do a very similar thing, and we're working on getting cohesion with the requirements as well.
Cool. And then if somebody hit that QR code, what pops up? All the requirements for the sign?
Excuse me. Yeah. So the QR code is actually just it brings up what you're looking at. It's kind of like this continuous infinity. But the reason why it's there is so that we can save paper. We can take one printout to an event, and instead of handing out flyers, people can just scan it on their phone and then it's saved somewhere. So instead of handing out a physical piece of paper.
Okay, excellent.
I will say that I'm working with Ace Hardware and McGuckin, and we're engaging with Home Depot as well to change their vendor. Their current suppliers don't have a sign that meet our requirements, but we are working with them. We also have multiple online stores that we're working with. The intention is that the Fire Protection District is going to do a campaign this summer to encourage folks to do that. And once our local suppliers have those, I think that's an important thing, right? Like, why make a change to code when you can't even buy the sign at your local hardware store? So that we're working with them. They're on board with it. Hoping to have a vendor by the end of the month.
That's great. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah.
Any other clarifying questions for Andrew?
Do you have an estimated cost that a sign will generally be?
Absolutely, yeah. So the consistent costs that we're getting from our online retail stores are, after tax and shipping, is $27.50.
Yeah, great. $30 is what I was expecting.
Yeah.
Perfect. And it's 5 years to compliance, right, from passage of the ordinance? Is that what's in here?
I believe that would be a Miranda.
Correct.
Yeah.
Great. 5 years to come up with $27.
Yeah, and one
It'll be
thing
44.
$5.40 a year.
I'll start saving.
Andrew, do you just want the number or do you want the actual street on there too? Just the number?
Just the number, yes.
Is there a possibility for group discounts, Andrew? Is there be maybe a reason to post something online, say, and try to get 15 or more people to sign up at the same time for
So-
some kind of discount?
Yeah, so thanks for your question. So some of the online retailers have options like that, where if you order more signs, that the price does get reduced. I have questions in regards to that I can't answer myself, which is, are they going to be 10 signs with the same number on them? Things like that. Like, I'm not really sure. It would seem like a silly thing, but you just never know with online retailers. In regards to our local hardware stores, I can't answer that yet because we're still working on a vendor. So it's something that we thought about. Initially, we were hoping to be more involved with it, but with supplying the signs. But I think that we'll focus on firefighting and emergency medical services and allow our hardware stores to step up into those roles. I will say that Sugarloaf is doing a really cool initiative where they're finding the funds internally to, as you know, with Sugarloaf, it's kind of a commuting road for a lot of folks. And so what they've done is they're about to purchase signs for a section of Sugarloaf Road that is the closest to the canyon, so that it gets a lot of traffic. There's a lot of people that drive there, and they're going to purchase those signs, replace them to code, and hope that other homeowners are inspired to, like, oh, that actually looks pretty good, and maybe it's not that big deal. We should get a sign too. So I like that kind of organic way of getting folks engaged with it. Something that I've spoke with Britt and Miranda about is to, in regards to enforcement, really have it on the front end where it applies to people that are pulling permits for certain things, or a change in property ownership, or building a new structure. So I think that's a way that we can do that in this community.
And that is in the ordinance as well, is that compliance for new builds, but the 5-year compliance range for existing homes. And the flyer that Andrew created is definitely great. And I think Britt's back on, but Britt had talked a lot about just making sure that's a part of the educational messaging when someone pulls a permit of, hey, here's all the information you need for the sign.
I'll also add that today I spent multiple hours with our company, Ember Alliance, that is putting forward the CWPP update. And I was showing them around the district, and you might see them driving around tomorrow in the town of Nederland. One of the things that they really look for is signs from a wildland perspective, and what does it look like? And this meets exactly the highest standard that you can set for what a wildland fire community should have for signage.
Any more clarifying questions for Andrew before we move to public comment? If not, let's go ahead and move to public comment. If there's no one from the public in the room, so if you're online with us and you have a comment, speak up. Not hearing any, I'm going to bring it back to the board for final discussion and motions.
Move to approve ordinance 844, repealing and replacing section 18-104 of the NMC related to address signs.
Second?
Macy?
Trustees,
Actually, real quick, any discussion?
Yeah,
Macy?
just
Trustees
one
Hurley?
quick comment. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
If anybody listening or if anybody in the room has a non-conforming driveway, in other words, if you've had more than 5 people tell you that Google Maps does not give them good directions to your house, I would recommend expediting this as quickly as possible. To Andrew's point, I've seen firsthand what happens when a house can't be found in time. So it's not good.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Macy?
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Trustee Mountain,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem Mahold.
Yes.
Thank you.
So
The
the
mo-
motion passes. So I want to look at the other two here. I want to make a motion on the fence code ordinance to move that action item.
So I think the language I want to use is to extend the public hearing, or I don't know if Attorney Mattson is here, if there's a better, but
I
to,
want to, yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll start with this one. Jennifer, what would you recommend when I make a motion to move this to a July?
To continue the public hearing and then put whatever date you want.
I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing on the fence code ordinance to July 18th.
Second.
Got a motion and a second?
Trustee Corvalon, Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
Mayor Billy.
Thank you, Marshall Jocelyn.
Yes.
Trustee Coombs
Thanks.
Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Mountain,
Yes.
and Trustee Severs.
Yes.
Thank you.
And so we have another action item, solar ordinance. I want to get a pulse of where people are at. I do want to respect it's already been a long night. It'll be 3 weeks till we meet again. But my motion to continue this would be to the 11th, to July 11th. But I want to get a sense, are people up for talking about solar ordinance tonight, or would you prefer we move to July 11th?
I'd like to get it done. We've
Okay.
kicked this can down the road many times. I wanted something, but I hate to see action items slip.
and maybe
Okay.
I can add that there are applicants actively waiting for a decision, for whatever that's worth.
Can we be more expeditious about the way we do these then? Can we just
Get it done in 5
pass the
minutes.
thing?
Yeah.
That's,
Sure.
I
We
agree.
also need to have clarifying questions, public comment. Yep.
We want to extend just slightly.
But
Let's see if we can get it done in 5 minutes.
we'll go ahead and get started then. So our next thing on the docket is 9.3 and the solar ordinance.
So this little solar ordinance has come before you multiple times. It's gone through the NPP process in many ways. And so long story short, the ordinance language, there wasn't any ordinance language when we presented it, but we gave you a PowerPoint that outlined everything we would put in the ordinance. There's been a lot of discussion about kind of height, and ultimately the solar subcommittee and SAB felt it was important to leave the recommendations that were presented to you back in May back a few months ago, December, leave it as is. So the ordinance is written in a way that mirrors the PowerPoint presentation, and we are asking for approval. The Planning Commission did discuss a little bit more the height, but ultimately did recommend approval of the ordinance as written.
Okay, so the planning commission, they did discuss it, but they ultimately ruled.
Unanimously ruled recommending
Yep.
approval.
Okay, any clarifying questions for Miranda? If not, we'll go ahead and move to public comment. Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion.
I
And a
move to
motion?
approve ordinance 843, amending chapter 16 of the NMC to add solar energy system regulations.
Second.
Any discussion? I have one discussion. I'm a little concerned with precedent of going above 35 feet, and I have been for over a year
We
being on that
wrestled
subcommittee.
this one at PC.
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
death.
it's just more about other
I
things,
agree.
other things going above 35 feet,
But
not
if we
just
can-
solar panels.
But if we can go to 35 feet with building, and if we want people to put solar on their buildings, and that becomes an impediment, that's no good for sustainability. So
That- that's-
I've made my peace with it.
Yeah, that's what swayed me in the subcommittee too. It just, I can't help but mention it.
Yep.
Well done.
Any other discussion? Macy?
Trustee Corvalon?
No, I'm in support of this.
So you're voting yes.
So is that a
I
vote of
didn't know we
yes
were
to
already
approve?
voting. I thought we were just still
We're
discussing.
voting.
We're voting
So,
to
yeah.
pass ordinance 843. Awesome, thank you. And Trustee Mountain?
Yes.
Trustee Severs?
Yes.
Trustee Sterling?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold?
Yes.
Mayor Billy?
Yes.
And Trustee Coombs Ismail?
Yes.
Thank you.
I move to adjourn.
Any other
Second.
business? Go ahead.
Second.
Okay. Mayor Billy?
Discussion?
All in favor?
Yes.
Trustee Mountain?
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold?
Yes.
Trustee Sterling?
Yes.
Trustee Severs?
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned at 10:29 PM.
Good
Oh,
morning,
a
Brett.
minute early. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.